What is up, and good morning everybody. So welcome back. This is going to be part 2 of the Viper build. Today I'm going to start taking these frame pieces apart, clean them up, make sure that all the welds and everything are good where the subframe bolts up. I'm going to do some gusset work, connect them together, cap the ends top and bottom, make it a nice solid clean strong frame rail. I'm gonna do both sides. I'm gonna bolt them back up, and then I put my rollers under it. It needs to come up higher, so I'm gonna figure out how much higher. That way I have the subframe so it can roll in and out. As I get these to line up, I can kind of figure it all out. So I'm probably gonna go buy some big 4x4s or something that I can lay on there, something that's solid and it'll all be the same. Then I can kind of just figure out how to get it all lined up there. So in this video, my goal, I want to get the subframe attached to the front of the car here. So let's go ahead and get started. Here's a quick little look before and after. Just really rusted, really orange, really bad. And then cleaned up here. I'm gonna have to lay a little bit of weld on these. I did try to grind them flush. I'm trying to make them look like just nice clean frame rails. So I'm going to cut this out a little bit where it's, you can see kind of here where the plates are poking through. I'm gonna grind it out a little bit. I'm gonna weld it so it's deep down in there. That just means their welds weren't that great. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna redo some of that, not all of it, just some of it. Spots where they didn't weld very deeply, I'm gonna weld a little bit deeper, clean it up again. I'm gonna have these looking real good, ready to go on the car. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna prep these and I'm gonna do the same. And then we're gonna bolt them up. We're gonna start tacking them together and doing all of our plate work here. Okay, so now that I have both the frame rails all fully cleaned up, grinded up, sanded, all the rust and everything gone, I'm gonna go ahead, I have them clamped together in a couple different spots. I'm gonna give them a couple different tacks on each side so they stay together. And I'm gonna unbolt them from the subframe, put them on the workbench. I'm gonna do some full beads down each side. I'm gonna start doing all the plate work to them. Okay, so now I have these welded down both sides, there and there. I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna hit them with the grinder, make sure that they're flat, make sure the weld's not bumping up. And then I have these labeled out at 4 inches, which is what the space there is. I'm gonna cut 4 of them for each opening. I'm gonna fully enclose, fully boxing all this in. And then what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna also cut a couple straps that are gonna go in there. And I'm gonna do a couple angle cuts and stuff, make them look kind of cool. Might put a couple holes in the middle of them or whatever. But we're gonna plate both sides just to make sure that this doesn't ever have the chance of coming apart or anything. Okay, so I do have everything fully welded. Everything's fully boxed except for this one weld here. As you can see, the washer and the bolt and everything is super close. So that's why I didn't weld that one while I was doing it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna weld in as far as I can to where I just barely touch the washer. I'll do it on both sides and that will hold the washer in place. And then I'm gonna put like one tack on this side. I'm gonna pull the bolt out. And then I'm actually gonna make that washer part of it. I'm gonna burn it in all the way around. I'm gonna burn it through the top here, and then I'm gonna be able to grind flat in the middle, grind out just a little bit of weld there to where the bolt still is able to spin everything. But that way it'll still be fully welded. But then if I was to just run a weld, you would never get the washer flat in here, and you would never be able to get the bolt all the way down just because it's so close. I could have shortened this, but I didn't want to lose. I have like the perfect amount of bite right here. I can put a 2-inch flat strap through there and it gives me enough room on each side to run a weld. It's already easy, it's plenty of leverage, and then I can run a nice gusset all the way through there. I can do that on both sides. I didn't want to make that any thinner. I wanted to leave it just thick enough, strong enough, able to put a nice 2-inch strap on there. So now I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna weld in a little bit both sides. I'm gonna weld this washer on. I'll pull the bolt out, I'll weld that little bit, and then we'll just grind that little bit out and it'll be good to go. So I'll let you guys see here. Just like that. Give it a little tack. Alright, then we will pull this bolt out. Nice and warm. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish burning it in. Okay, so as you can see, it is fully welded in. I did grind that groove there for clearance. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that bolt in. As you can see, fully spins, everything's good to go. So this frame rail is going to be good. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to finish the other side. Alright, so here we are. I do have everything fully welded together, fully gusseted, both sides here. I'm going to show you. I did go ahead and I fully bolted it all up to the subframe here. I did put some spacers underneath, just some pieces of pipe I had laying around, but it does hold it all at the proper height. So as you can see, the frames I just built are wider than the Viper frame. So I'm going to have to pie cut it and angle it in so it'll go in and sleeve. Same thing over here, we're gonna have to pie cut it. So it'll continue out with, and it'll flow into it. And then same thing, we'll plate both sides, but we're gonna do an internal sleeve and everything on there. Okay, so quick little update here. I went down to the steel yard. They do not have any kind of rectangle tubing here that will sleeve properly. The sizes are a lot different than the smaller round and square where you can sleeve everything. So what I did was I bought a pretty long piece. I cut it into 3 sections, and then one of the sections I sliced straight down the middle. It doesn't fill it perfectly. There's a little bit of a gap. It needed to be a little bit more than down the middle, but I wanted to keep my pieces long. Again, I did only buy one piece. That's all they had of the proper inner diameter here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spread these. This is 2 slivers that I cut off one of the frame rails on the end there, since I do have to slide it back into the car. So I cut a couple slivers off to give me kind of like a little sleeve jig here. I'm going to push them apart here so they're tight on the inside, and I'm just going to run some fat tacks there, and then I'm going to pull it out, and I'm just going to fill that in, and I'm going to kind of make my own little internal sleeve piece there, and then I'll grind it all smooth so that way it slides in nice and evenly. So it'll have 3 walls through there, so it'll end up being pretty nice and sturdy. That's just to make sure that when the frames slide together, the stock frame and the new frame, everything's gonna slide in and it's gonna basically square everything up. So when the pieces slide together, it's gonna be a consistent, straight, smooth transition. And then I am gonna do also both sides, the outer flat plate gussets as well. So strength is not gonna be an issue. That's probably gonna be the beefiest part of the whole frame. So I got this kind of set up here. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna just start welding it together. All right, so here we go. Both of them are fully welded, both sides, fully grinded down. The actual frame pieces, they fully slide on and off nice and easily, both of them. So as you can see, it is a piece of square tooth and a half. Runs all the way through. Nice thick welds all the way down. So that's it. That's gonna be our sleeve pieces for the frame. Okay, so here's where we're at now. I have the sleeves inserted into the frame. I also did some, drilled some holes there so I could do some rosette welds just to get a little bit a bite further down the frame rail. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna bolt the frame rails back onto the subframe here. I did already cut the same exact 2 inches off the other side. So it should put us from 4.5 inches off our mark to 2.5 inches from our mark. But when we, I'm gonna basically do like a V cut and kind of make them fold in a little bit. That will take some length out of them, and then I will cut how much we need out of them to get the center of the hubs. They need to line up with this line here, which is the Dodge Viper, the factory wheelbase. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna get the frame rails bolted back on, and then we're gonna start figuring out where we need to do our V cuts. All right, so here's the idea here. So I have my string weight, same string weights we used before, hanging center down hub. I have my hub mark. So we are 2 5/8. So what I'm gonna do, since I know the frame rail, as it goes in, swings in, it will shorten the length just a little bit. It's not gonna be much. It's not moving over very far. So what I'm gonna do, instead of cutting at 5/8, I'm just gonna cut at 2.5. That way it leaves a little bit extra length on the frame rail, but also I want it to lose a little bit of length because I want to have a decent little gap in between the frame rails to get a nice weld. So just doing some weird numbers in my head, I think it should give me just a nice little gap. Whatever we get, we'll deal with it later. We'll figure it out as we go. But I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna cut 2.5 inches off of each frame rail. I'm gonna put it all back together how it is. And then we're gonna start figuring out where that cut's gonna be for the V cut. All right guys, so here we go. As I was trying to get everything figured out on how I'm going to connect everything here, I did run into everything was kind of offset a little bit. So I started double checking all my lines on the ground. I took those pieces off that were there and I went something a little more directly inside. Come to find out, this side was a 1/2 inch further out. So I did redraw my lines, redid all my measurements. I moved my center point over, as you can see there, and the one inside in the middle there. And then I did also measure from this corner of the body to the middle, this corner of the body to the middle, and I put a line right on the windshield here. Let me see, let me get rid of the reflection there. So I put a line there. So then I reset up the laser here. As you can see it kind of flashing in the video here. So now I have everything relined up. Everything is working much better now. So everything is square, everything's good. I measured from end to the body corner there and to the body corner over there. They are both perfectly at 70 inches. So everything seems to be working out a lot better. So also first thing I did was I pulled out my cheat sheet, my notes from right before we cut the car apart. I started double checking all my heights, hub height, lower arm height, upper arm height, minimum ground clearance, everything. I did run out and buy a motorcycle jack. So I ended up having to raise everything. So now everything is back to the original Viper specs. I went out and bought the same thickness, but a lot taller. So from a 3x2 to a 5x2 rectangle tubing. So I did go ahead and I slid that on the sleeves. I tacked it in place, so those are sitting there. I'm going to do the same thing on the top part just to kind of fill that gap there. But that's gonna put everything pretty much at the correct height. And then I'm gonna cut certain parts out and plate it and all that, and then I'll do the big side plates inside and outside on both driver and passenger sides. So now everything is squared up. Everything is the proper height. Everything is the proper length. I cut some more length off the back side of the frame rails that we made, and I had to shorten my sleeves that I had made a little bit. So now everything is lined up with our hub mark. Everything's good to go. This is basically where it's gonna be. So now if you go to top view, this is where I'm gonna pie cut this frame, and I'm gonna pull it in. I'm gonna make them line up. So now I have my lines on exactly where I need to be. So basically it needs to attach like right behind this bolt. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna cut a V out of here, and I'm gonna fold this over until it lines up. I'm gonna do that on both sides. Alright guys, so fast forward a couple days. The front of the frame is fully boxed. The upper frame rails are tied into place on both sides. Everything is fully welded. We did leave these squares. I don't know if I explained this before. But we did have to do this frame a little goofy because the Viper doesn't have a subframe, but the Corvettes do. Since we're going with a twin turbo LS and we're doing basically a front Corvette cantilever front end, but we still want to do the Viper exhaust and side pipes. So I had to rebuild this frame and basically leave that same square opening that the stock Viper frame had. So I duplicated kind of the Viper frame, and then I had to go up to basically compensate for the subframe to be able to bolt underneath the frame instead of the frame rail just running straight forward and then tabs and everything coming off of that. So it's a little bit different style, but all of our measurements, everything should come out the same. Suspension geometry wise, motor mount wise, everything is identical. From the very bottom of the subframe, your ground clearance is exactly the same as all the factory Dodge Viper measurements that I had taken. So that's gonna be a wrap for this video. We do have all the front frame done. So in the meantime, that's gonna be on hold, and we're gonna start moving into the interior cab cage. We're gonna start pulling the glass and running some tubes. So that's gonna be our next video. So once again, thanks for all your support. Thanks for liking and subscribing to the channel. Any questions, just feel free to ask. I mean, I'll feel free to answer questions or explain anything along the way. I have never done a Corvette Dodge Viper before. Honestly, I don't think anybody has. As far as I've seen on the internet, I think this is a one-time deal. So this is gonna be a pretty cool build. So like I said, any questions, comments, anything, just let me know and I'll get on them. So thanks again for watching, everybody. We'll see you on the next video. Peace out.